You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with me today is Dr. Joe Venosa. Joe, thanks for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
So it's our first episode of 2025.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
You too.
Thanks.
So we have a couple meetings coming up, both the county and the city. The first one's the county on January 7th, 6 o'clock meeting this time around, room 301. Just looking at their agenda, and it was so much I couldn't even write all of it down. There's so many public hearings, but basically you're starting to see the process of them kind of setting up the year. There's some public hearings that really involve legislative support from the county council for the delegation in Annapolis during their session, and each of them are broke down. I mean, so there's opportunity for the public to speak each time. You saw this process last year. What's your take on it?
Well, I think it's always based on the dynamics of Annapolis, and right now those dynamics in Annapolis are led by the budget issues. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what actual legislative priorities the county fully gets behind first, and then can our delegation deliver any of those based on what we're facing, given the budget
But do you
situation.
think these legislative initiatives are the most pressing business for this county?
Personally, I think they're terrible.
Okay.
I really do. I think they are not in the interest of any regular person. In fact, I believe the three top priorities, at least from the county executive's office, were alcohol bills.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that
was
is-
last year, too.
That was last year too. Go figure. But here's what's interesting about that. At the state level, they're also talking about the liberalization of beer and wine stores. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that dynamic plays out from the state, which is not going to involve us in terms of making a decision.
Yeah.
So you have some interesting things. You have the state going one way, you have the county, at least executive office, seemingly going the other. And then again, that's all happening in the middle of almost a $3 billion deficit.
So I think the scariest part for me is that there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, I think in life you're always trying to have as much control as possible, limit the unknown factors. We have a lot, and let's discuss those for a second.
Sure.
One, we don't know just what our own state is going to have to overcome to overcome a $3 billion budget deficit that I think is projected at $6 billion in 2 more years, right?
Yeah, depending on how you factor it.
So that's bad, but it could be worse.
Sure.
We do have some education mandates that are coming through, and I think we've heard from some folks. I want you to speak to this.
Yeah.
Some of it's come through, but some of it hasn't, right?
Yeah. Essentially, what has come through, or what has begun to reveal itself, is the kind of bureaucratic apparatus of the blueprint, which is more standardization of process, a lot more micromanaging of teachers and staff. Interestingly, very little of the actual money to encourage teachers and staff to enter the teaching field has come through.
Yeah.
And that's happening this year.
That's happening right now.
It has to happen this year.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. If they decide to push back the compensation part of Blueprint for teachers, then you're left with more, not only just unfunded mandates, but more work on an already overly taxed group of professionals, and probably less people likely to go into the teaching field because the financial obligations are not there. So it's as if you front-loaded all of the work with none of the resources.
Okay, so that's another variable we don't know.
Correct.
We also we don't really have a full grasp just yet about what the state's going to be able to do to fund like Fruitland Primary. Our county may be on the hook for at least forward funding another $26 million towards the school. We're about to put a shovel in the ground, right?
Correct. And again, this was something that I think we're all perplexed by, because other projects in our area outside of Wycomico were able to get it. And
Well, one in particular in Somerset County, the state is fully
funded it. And they have no executive with no supposed relationship to the governor. So you tell me, I don't know what's going on, but it would seem that in this moment, when we need our delegation and our executive to deliver to the governor, to deliver for the people from the governor's office, this is crunch time. So I hope it changes.
So our county council has to deal with some of these variables, and yet I feel like they're not full of the facts from the last fiscal year that just closed. I mean, particularly, we still don't have the audit from 2024. So we don't really know just how much is in the fund,
Well,
right?
let's look at it like this. We don't we don't have an actual audit from last year. We don't have an audit that we were supposedly promised from the safari at the quarry, but the county executive is making it a priority to audit the liquor dispensary.
Yeah, and that's one of the public hearings
That's
we're
one of
going
the
to
issues.
see. Yeah.
So you tell me, as far as logic, I mean, look, I can't understand it. I would hope that we would have some answers. I doubt we'll get them, at least from that office, but those are the facts.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the county executive's office and tax subsidies.
Yeah.
We did, in fact, find out since the last county council meeting that our county executive has approved the tax subsidy for the Ross building. Now, this is a application that was turned in late. We've heard a lot of the stories. They didn't have a proper application. They didn't know. They didn't understand.
Sure.
At the end of the day, this is $2.5 million spread out over 10 years, given away. And it's not counting the city's portion. This is just the county's portion.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, are you seeing a dichotomy here where we're spending money like we know more's coming in, but we don't actually know what we have and what else is coming in?
Well, we're certainly spending. Well, I'm not saying we're not necessarily spending money. We're giving it away, is what we're doing in terms of those subsidies. You know, if you're spending it on an actual project, you could at least make the argument this is where it's going. We're giving certain people more money.
Well, we spent $2+ million more on the Civic Center that wasn't in the capital improvement fund.
On that part.
We've already spent almost $400,000 on the library renderings. That's actually money out of 2025.
Yeah, yeah.
But then the other elephant in the room here is the disparity grant.
Right.
We don't know where it's going to land, and I'm not sure if a lot of people know just what that money's been used for.
Well,
lately.
and I think we both agree, frankly, anybody watching this would probably agree that if our state is facing an almost $3 billion deficit this year, does anybody expect our disparity grant to go up?
Well, so it actually went down the last 2 years.
Exactly.
It peaked out in 2021 at $12.4 million. The last year we have numbers for, unfortunately, is 2023.
Go figure.
11.8 million, and it doesn't figure to go up, and we don't know if it will stay the same or even go down.
Right.
But we're trying to piece together because the budget process for the next fiscal year, which starts July 1st of 2025, is starting in the next couple months. So this ball gets rolling. It seems like you have lots of time, but it goes really fast.
We go from the abstract to reality very quickly.
Yeah. And we could be standing here 100 days. I mean, we got 100 days between now and the end of the legislative session. And one of the nice things, like we're going to have Councilman Joe Holloway in the studio as today's guest, and I'm going to get a chance to ask him just where he sees the current state of the county, especially on a fiscal side, and what are the possibilities we could go to? Because if we don't get our house in order locally or even at the state level, trying to predict what's going to happen to the variables at the federal level won't even really matter.
It'll be a layered cake of problems, perhaps. But you're right, we don't know yet.
Well, thanks for coming in, and we'll see what Councilman Holloway has to say. And
cannot wait.
Don't forget, City Council meeting then following Monday,
January 13th. Yeah.
You have to register now if you want to speak, right?
So, correct, folks. So, for your information, it has now been apparently decided by Council President Deshaun Doughty and the City Council that they are first cutting down the public comment time from 3 to 2 minutes, and then now you are required to submit or to put your name for submission for public comments online by noon of the day of the meeting.
Or 6 p.m. in person.
In person of that
which
day.
is going to be tough for a lot of folks. Especially if there are no more Zoom, right?
Correct, and I think it's going to raise all sorts of other questions that the community will probably have to, express. However, if you're going to go to the January 13th meeting, which will be a very big meeting because it'll be the first vote on the density change, the second, it will be at 6 p.m. So if you want to make in-person public comments for the January 13th meeting, you'll have to submit by noon of that day to the to the City Council.
Well, thanks for coming in. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah.
Stay with us. We're going to have Councilman Joe Holloway in the studio, and we're going to get to ask him some of the same budget questions that we're raising here now. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with me is Councilman Holloway from the 5th District, Wycomico County. So I want to talk about what we can anticipate in 2025 and we're really not that far from the 2026 fiscal budget. Those hearings are going to be coming up in April and May. But we're also going to need to discuss a little bit about how we left off 2024 and how that's going to impact the 2025 year for the county, right?
Correct.
So let's talk about the budget process, because I think one of the hardest things to kind of put your mind around is, okay, we just turned the page to the calendar 2025, and yet the fiscal year for the county for 2026 is going to start July 1st. And that means all the budget meetings, the hearings are actually for 2026 are right around the corner,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're dealing with a state, the state of Maryland, that has a 2.75 billion or more. We're not sure if we're going to go over.
They're saying around 3.
Yeah.
Budget shortfall.
Budget shortfall.
Yeah.
And generally those have to do with tax increases, but also the dreaded unfunded mandates coming down to the county.
Fee increases, tax increases,
Yeah.
unfunded mandates, yes.
So we saw that in 2008, really the last
Yeah.
time we ran into this with Governor O'Malley. All of a sudden, the county is responsible for half of the teachers' pensions, right?
Correct. And we lost our roads money for the county roads.
Yeah.
I think it was like $7 million they took away from us at one time.
Well, let's talk about where we're at in the upcoming budget process, and then we'll talk about exactly what would happen in 2024. Right now, you're on the next agenda for the first meeting in January. You actually have a public hearing about approving the capital improvement plan, the CIP. And what's your thoughts? Are you all apt to delay that?
I have a different view on that. I think we need to put that off and only vote on that. Now we can have all the hearings we want,
Absolutely.
when we do the operating budget. That was suggested by a citizen, and we've done that in the past. I think since I've been on the council, we've done it 3 times. CIP is just a planning document, and it stretches out 3 or 4 years, 5 years, whatever. But what happens if we approve that before we approve the operating budget, this 1 year, it kind of says, okay, you've agreed to do that.
Yeah.
So it's not, you can't go, you say, well, you can't go back on this because you've already agreed to do it. Well, you can go back on it, but people look at it in a different lens, saying, oh, you agreed to it before, so let's go with it. So we had a gentleman come up to the podium and suggest that we do that again to put it off until we do the general operating budget, which I think we should do.
Well, there are some questions other than the state's fiscal issues that could trickle down into the county, but there are still some unknown questions. Like take Fruitland Primary funding, the new school. The county last year bonded part of the project, also set aside some of the reserve funds to pay for part of the project, but with the understanding that the state of Maryland was going to pay for their part on time. You all have since found out that that's actually not going to be the case.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to happen. I don't think we've ever seen that after the state said they would do something like that they backed up, closed the door on that, while the county to the south of us, they funded them for a school
At 100%, right?
Yeah,
And that was at
yeah,
Chrisfield.
Yeah, and that's interesting that happened. That just shows you that what's going to happen to all the other money that the state, has earmarked probably to come to Wicomico County. We've got a lot of other issues that it could affect. So,
Do you think this is the Democratic governor at Annapolis playing politics with a county that maybe had supported his opponent? I mean, our county executive has been on record as being a fan of Dan Cox. Is that what we're seeing here?
well, I don't know so, because our county executive claims she has the ear of the governor. I don't know. You have to ask the governor.
Well, what do you tell the parents and the students and the teachers at Fruitland Primary? Are we going to build this school?
I think it's going to get built, and then it's going to be a struggle in the future to try to get it paid for.
Well, okay, so, and I think we're looking at the state's fund, or part of this is $26 million. Is that
Yes,
accurate?
right. Yeah, 26, 27, something like that. Yeah.
So they're asking the county to forward fund this.
More fun, and then I think the statement was they'll pay us back when they can, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that with inflation? Or is
Yeah,
that,
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
They'll pay us in $2,046.
Yeah.
So we don't really know where the dollars are going to come out of the bank for Fruitland Primary. We're fairly certain it's going to be built.
You know, we're probably going to have to bond it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is going to cost us not just the $26 million, but interest on the
Interest
26.
on that. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, that's one of the reasons why you're suggesting that we wait and try to make sure that any other capital improvements are only paid for when we know we have the money.
We've been unfortunately, the county's been very aggressive in a lot of other things they want to do.
Well, I want to talk about a couple of those projects.
Yeah.
One, let's talk about the Civic Center. Just a couple months ago, the county council agreed to give an additional $2 million in capital improvement money for the Civic Center renovation. So they started out in the $6.6 million range, and now we're about $9 million.
Yeah. That's correct.
So that money wasn't in the CIP for 2025, right?
And you know, we haven't stuck a shovel in the ground yet. So if you're talking about that kind of an increase without, and by the way, I didn't vote for that.
Oh, yeah.
Increase that.
Actually, you had a couple dissenting votes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was like 4-3 or something like that.
Absolutely.
4-2. Pretty aggressive spending of our taxpayers' dollars that we don't know where we're going to be in the next few months, or this coming year.
So another open-ended expense is the airport. Now, we had the airport runway extension, and that has been fully funded. That's a process. I mean, you were on the county council 10 years ago when you started this.
Right.
This is
correct.
This is not our current county executive or even the one preceding her. This is going back 10 years, right?
Correct.
But there has been a grant. Now, this was brought to the county council this past fall, very last minute. Is it a grant that the county put $50,000 in, and so did Worcester County put another $30,000. The Greater Salisbury Committee committed $10,000.
Now this isn't for the airport runway extension. This is for this airline.
For
this
the new airline.
Yeah.
But
To entice them to come in.
But Wicomico County is the only one on the hook for making sure that this airline is profitable for 2 years, right?
Yeah, that was, that's kind of like a little bit of an open checkbook to guarantee their profitability.
But the county also took on a couple other liabilities in 2024. You purchased the Verizon building.
Correct.
And also the new building for the state's attorney's office.
Correct, yeah.
So how is those expenses going to work either in the capital improvement fund or the operating budget moving forward?
Well, it was an interesting. The Verizon building was purchased because we have, of all things, flooding problems at the health department building on Main Street, which was the old Penny's building. They've been trying to get out of that building for a number of years. Now, from what I saw about the purchase of the Verizon building, I was fine with that. That can be a multi-purpose building. We've ended up with that building. We're going to be collecting rent from Verizon for that building for 2 or 3 years, I believe, and that was okay. I supported that. Then we move on to the state's attorney's building that's behind where the current health department building is now that we're replacing up on Main Street. And I didn't vote for that. And that's because that was in a flood zone. And I think there was two council members voted against it, and I voted against it. And I just couldn't get past that. I mean, you look at the flood maps, the neighbor had sandbags up against the doors, where they'd had flooding problems. And I'm not saying that the state's attorney didn't need a building. I just don't think it was well thought out.
The budget process that we're about to go through, I mean, it's going to have to take into account at least some level of remodeling of these buildings?
Yeah,
okay.
That's correct, yeah.
When do you expect the budget hearings to start? Do they start in April or May?
I think in April, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the very first one is a public hearing this coming Tuesday,
Yeah.
January 7th, 6 o'clock meeting, and that's about the capital improvement.
That's a CIP.
And that's really kind of the first time the public can weigh in.
Just to make the public aware. We
Okay.
just got it we just got the budget at the last meeting. So anyway.
Well, so let's talk about things you were supposed to receive in December. You were given the capital improvement plan right at the deadline, which is basically handed to you in the middle of a county council meeting.
That's the way it works.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's by the code.
Yeah.
But what haven't you received? You haven't gotten the final audit report
No.
of
And then we won't
2020.
get that probably until February or March. Yeah. And it's usually not, not available before then. I think this past year was the same way.
But
yeah.
is it supposed to be in December? Is that when it's
I
supposed
don't
to be
think there's
due?
a deadline on that. I'm not
Okay.
sure if there is or not. Yeah.
But we're entering in some uncharted territory with the state and their budget.
Correct. Yeah.
We have quite a few liabilities, some even that we didn't plan for, like Fruitland.
Right.
Some we didn't plan for, but we still funded, like the Civic Center. And we're really not sure just where we finished the last year, which actually wrapped up about
Correct.
28 weeks ago now, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you tell taxpayers that are maybe concerned about their level of services and also their tax their tax rate in Wycomico County?
About their tax rate?
Yeah.
Well, we'll hope it doesn't go up.
Yeah.
We can't control when we get the information. That's up to the county executive.
Okay.
They need to put it to us, and that's what I say. I say, hey, we haven't got the information yet. That's
I mean-
the best you can do.
So, want to talk a little bit more about what some of the legislative goals are. Will you stay around another segment?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we'll go through that.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. In the studio with me today is Councilman Joe Holloway from the 5th District. So, want to talk about some of the legislative opportunities that our county executive has pointed out going into 2025. If we back up to 2024, one of the big bills that went through Annapolis was taking away the monopoly of the liquor dispensary by simply changing that restaurants shall purchase from the dispensary
Right.
to may, so that it allowed them to buy from distributors direct.
Correct. Yeah.
A good opportunity for a lot of restaurants to
Correct.
have choice. But at the same time, you asked this question in January when the task force met with the county council before the county council gave the support for that bill. And you asked it again in May when the delegation, including our former delegate Carl Anderton, you asked, was this it? And of course, I think we got a sneak peek in July at the county executive's press conference that this was just opening the door and they might as well walk
Right.
through it, as he said. You're seeing more liquor bills. They're going to be at the next county council that you're going to have to decide whether or not to give your support. Some of these are more towards the lines of actually, it seems to be eliminating the dispensary. Do you get that same sense?
The county executive said she doesn't want to eliminate this dispensary, but if you open the door for any store in the county that liquor board sees fit to sell liquor, it'll put them out of business, and we're going to give up anywhere between $700,000 and $1 million worth of revenue a year if that happens. I supported, for the business to be able to buy directly from the distributors, and I explained to them why. I thought that was a fair move, but I don't support that. If you're talking about the issues we're having with Annapolis, they're talking about this $3 billion shortfall. Are we willing to give up at this point in time, anywhere between $700,000 and $800,000, whatever the liquor dispensaries give us? Okay, are we willing to give that up at this point in time? I don't think that's a wise move.
Well, you asked the question to the county executive at the last meeting. How would we replace the revenue?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a satisfactory
No,
answer?
I didn't get a satisfactory answer. I mean, I don't know of anybody out there that's going to write us a check
Yeah.
for that amount of money and just say, here. you know.
Well, speaking of responses, and this kind of goes back to question A, and you know, question A didn't pass by a vote of 54 to 46, but you brought up the liquor bills at that time as well, and I think the county executive and the director of administration, Bunky Loughlin, they took you to task a little bit about that, right?
Yeah, they were a little unkind in her executive update. But if she's picking on me, she's leaving other people alone.
Yeah.
So I look at it like that. They said some things that were a little unkind. You know, my point that generated those comments were, why do we have, when we have a meeting with our delegation, at the top three things on the agenda to go to Annapolis or liquor bills? And there are more things that's more important. So.
You're talking about the legislative breakfast that the county executive
yeah,
hosted back in September, right?
Correct.
So at this point, you kind of have their ear. Like they're here to listen to what Wycomico County needs, and they hear liquor bill, liquor bill, liquor bill.
Correct.
And that's after we passed the liquor bill, right?
Right. Now, there were other people in the audience. You know, the state's attorney was there. There was the school board was there that brought up things that, you know, I think the state's attorney was, you know, the laws are being passed so they can't arrest young people that are committing crimes. I mean, that was concerns with them. But basically, those three bills were at the top of the list. And then I think the Sunday hunting law or something like that was on there too. So, anyway.
Well, so there are public hearings at the January 7th meeting that relate to these liquor bill initiatives for 2025. Right. What do you think the public needs to know about? What's the direction? What are we headed?
One of the bills is about an audit for the liquor dispensaries. Now, we have the audit firm that audits the county.
The PKS.
PKS. Mm-hmm. They also audit the liquor dispensary.
Now.
Right.
Okay.
Now, but they want the state to audit the liquor dispensary. Now, what good government official doesn't agree with have audits done, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you know, you want, and it was stated that the county executive wasn't getting the information she needed, but all she has to do is ask. You know, if there's information that they're not getting, they said something about profit and loss, but I understand that was in there. But all they have to do is ask. I mean, if this firm is good enough to audit the whole county, why shouldn't they be able to audit and us believe what they're saying? You see what I'm saying?
What comes faster, the audit of the liquor dispensary bill, or us finding out how we finished the last fiscal year? I mean, is it?
I don't know.
Yeah. One question that was brought up was, who's going to pay for this audit? And I think it was presented to the county council that the state pays for it. But is that accurate?
We don't know the answer to that question. Now, I would say this: I think the same state agency at different times audits the Board of Ed. Okay, and I actually talked to one of those auditors one time, and I think it depends on who generates the audit. If there's suspicion, if there's a problem, probably they would step in and do it. But if it's requested by somebody else, like the council or the county executive, we would probably have to foot the bill for that.
Well,
so we don't know that yet, so we'll find out.
So we need more information,
right?
And public hearings is a great way for some of this to come out. So talking about numbers, we have been promised by the promoter of the Safari at the Quarry of numbers from that event that happened May 5th last year, 2024. Right. The public still has not seen them. I don't know if the county has, seen anything, but when do you expect that we will get some closure, some final results from that event and the expenses from the county?
What I've seen and heard is there was actually a loss.
Oh, so, and who paid for the loss?
Well, the taxpayers paid for the loss. Well, who else would?
Well, what would the loss have gone into? Like what parts of the event would have created a loss? Is it the law enforcement overtime and everything paid for there?
Well, when I say a loss, we didn't make any money off of it. So maybe I used the wrong terminology there. Okay. We didn't make any money off of it. So we don't know if it cost us any money or not. I probably misspoke there, but.
Well, Councilman Hastings, back in the December 2023 work session with Brad Hoffman, asked, is the county getting any upfront money for this rental of county property? And the answer was no. It was just a portion of whatever profits.
right.
And you're saying that there was no profit.
No
so-
profit, no.
But we still had expenses, right?
I would say we did.
I mean, there were.
But I don't know what they are.
Sheriff Lewis said there was extra
Yeah,
manpower out there.
There was extra manpower,
Okay.
Yeah.
Equipment possibly from
correct?
other departments. So when do you expect that we would find out?
I don't know if we ever will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, talking about tax subsidies and money coming out the door, just recently the Horizon bill, the Horizon Fund was sunsetted for Wycomico County, not for the city of Salisbury. But before that sunset came up, the owners of the Ross, Mentis Capital, came back to the county. Now, it was 6 months late, but they said, they had a whole story about that they didn't get their application in because they didn't know, or they didn't see an application online. I think you voted against giving them this money at the end, right?
That's correct.
But and it did pass 4-3. Initially, it was 3-3 with one abstention,
Right, yeah.
and then Councilwoman
They brought it
Shane
back up
Shields.
for another vote, yeah.
Now, there was some discrepancy here about whether or not the county executive had to approve this. And initially, she said on her executive exclusive that it had nothing to do with her office. And then at the early December meeting, her attorney, Paul Wilbur, the county attorney, and then the council's attorney, Mr. Benson, they were both asked, and what was their response for what?
Well, she had to sign off on it for them to get, the Horizon took place 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the program itself. I voted against it then.
Okay.
So it comes back with the Ross building. They were late in making their application. It's about a $2.5 million loss to the county. Now, the interesting thing I've heard is, well, if they hadn't have built that, we would have not gotten any money, or a very small amount of money, from the property that was there. So now we are going to get some money, but we're going to miss out on $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Well, you could say that about anything in Wycomico County.
Same with my piece of property I built a house on. Right?
Yeah, right. I think that's a misstatement there. I'm not going to dwell on that too much. I voted against it. This project was advertising on the internet for a 15% return on any investor that invested $50,000 or more.
Okay.
Now, I asked their attorney that day about that, and she says they have to have this tax break to succeed. So, is that to make sure those investors get their 15%?
Yeah.
That's.
Or do they finish in the black at all?
Yeah,
You don't really know.
End up like the safari at the quarry, with no money.
But at the end of the day, did the county executive have to sign off on it?
Yeah, she did,
And
she did.
I was present at the second meeting in December. You asked the county executive directly whether or not she signed off on it. What was her response to your
I don't
question?
recall just exactly what her response was then, but she has signed off on it.
But in fact, she had signed off on it before that.
I'm
meeting,
not
right?
sure when she signed off on it,
Yeah,
but
it was in early December.
Yeah,
I mean, I've
yeah.
seen the email approving it.
Yeah.
So I think one of the questions like we need to be able to ask is where is our revenue going to come from if we're going to basically slowly kill the dispensary, if we're going to spend money in capital improvements that aren't on the CIP, and we're going to go into a budget season where we have no idea where the state of Maryland is going to finish. What can the taxpayers of Wycomico County really come to expect?
Well, I think we're probably going to see another push to do something with the revenue cap.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's been tossed around. This past budget, it was tried to override the revenue cap for the education, which was allowed by Annapolis. Okay.
Through legislative measures, right?
Yeah, through legislative matter. The executive wanted to override the revenue cap, and what people need to realize is their taxes are going up anyway because of assessments. In fact, there was an article in the Baltimore Sun yesterday or the day before where there's going to be, I think they were saying on an average 20% increase or something like that. And our revenue cap keeps the rate down. So
Okay.
you're going to get tax increase anyway if assessments go up. So the rate stays down, so you won't get as much of a tax increase. That's to be seen. Whatever happens there. Now, unfortunately, from what I'm seeing, I heard one of our delegates, Delegate Beecham, at the CIP meeting made some statements derogatory toward the revenue cap, and I'm worried that they're going to take some kind of action in Annapolis, that they would, try to give the county or the county executive or whatever leeway to override it and
More exceptions.
More exceptions.
What would be the best place for folks to get more information as far as finding this out? I mean,
Come to the council meetings. We have very few people come to the council meeting.
thank you for coming in today.
Yeah.
Appreciate you taking the time to talk everything about what we can expect in 2025 and also some of the history from the recent past.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Open Agenda. We'll see you next week with another new episode.
I know what I'm doing, man.